Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and it does feel like an eternity, I must admit, and I had a splendid time in Milan. Food is delicious. The hospitality from Mr. Conforti was excellent, but at times it was rather surreal, but I'll tell you about that another time. I took this photo of Doha as we were taking off, and the colours were so light and ephemeral because of the sunshine, even at that hour of the morning, which was about 7. My piece over the weekend is a small window for sharks as dollar rises. On August the 25th, I wrote this: "You see, in the old days, these conditions would have created a flight into the dollar. If things tipped big, the dollar might soar." This time last year, the US was printing $85 billion a month under its quantitative easing QE3 program, and the party was in full swing, like in the Great Gatsby novel, in which the author Scott Fitzgerald writes, "In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and stars." The punch bowl just kept on giving. Well, next month, the entire QE program gets wrapped up. The markets have been wrestling with some serious hangover effects. The US economy snapped higher in the second quarter to expand at a revised 4.6% on an annualized basis, posting the fastest rate of expansion since the fourth quarter of 2011. The dollar posted an 11th straight week of gains against a basket of major currencies, extending the longest winning streak since its 1971 free float under President Richard Nixon. Dollar index hit a 4-year peak of 85.65. Its higher rallied 1.1% against the euro last week, is at levels not seen since November 2012 against the euro. In my opinion, any nascent recovery in Europe was nipped in the bud because of Ukraine-related contagion, particularly in Germany, where Germany's IFO Institute for Economic Research said its business climate gauge slid to 104.7 this month, the lowest since April 2013, from 106.3 in August. Inflation in the Eurozone, which has its nose barely above zero at 0.4%, could go negative in the next 12 months. The dollar has had liftoff against the yen, reaching 109.46 on September 19th, which was the highest level since August 2008. Commodity currencies have been getting creamed. The rand has sliced through 11 and was last at 11.22 against the dollar. The Brazilian real has retreated 7.4% over the last 4 weeks. Gold was last trading at 12.14 and could seriously crash and burn. On October the 3rd, the US Labor Department will release employment statistics for September. A big print, and frankly it's predictable and predicted that we will get a big print, maybe not this time, but inevitably in the next 6 months. US Department will release employment statistics, and I think we're going to get a big print, and that's going to send the dollar soaring again. The dollar is emerging out of a multi-year disequilibrium. The US is now pushing out a lot of oil imports, and the system is awash in the black stuff. Hence why there's been no upside pop in the price of oil, notwithstanding the drumbeat of war in the Middle East. Stanley Druckenmiller, who with George Soros bet the bank against the Bank of England on September the 16th, 1992, and made off with £1 billion in the days when £1 billion was a serious amount of stash, said this: "As a macro investor, my job for 30 years was to anticipate changes in the economic trends that were not expected by others, and therefore not yet reflected in securities prices. Soros has taught me that when you have tremendous conviction on a trade, you have to go for the jugular. It takes courage to be a pig. As far as Soros is concerned, when you're right on something, you can't own enough. The last time I felt it sore in my blood like I feel it now was May 2003, when President George Bush delivered his mission accomplished speech on the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. That day, and for about 48 hours, the world believed George Bush, and more importantly, the crude oil markets did as well. The price of oil slumped to $31.50 a barrel. Like a panther, and I've been reading too much Pablo Neruda, who tends to prowl around like a panther sniffing the air. I sniffed the air looking for liquidity, called my banker looking for a line that I could swing, and swing it I did. I bought a lot of call options on oil over that period. Oil price subsequently rebounded very dramatically as the market realized that Iraq was far from over, and as we realize today. The point I'm making is that the dollar has just started going. There will be blood in the water. There is a small window if we want to be the sharks. The last time I took a real big bet when I was a lot younger. I think the time to put that bet on, and I'm looking at it as we speak. George Bush, mission accomplished. I'll put up an image of that. Another image of Black Wednesday 1992. I was just arrived on the trading floor, and these events unfolded in front of my eyes. It was terribly dramatic. And I'll put up a photograph of Stanley Druckenmiller, whose sort of mantra is something I believe in. As a macro investor, my job for 30 years was to anticipate changes in the economic trends that were not expected by others, and therefore not yet reflected in securities prices. From The Great Gatsby, reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. And I think that's very true. But it does mean that if you reserve it a lot, there is much more noise that you're dealing with. Julius Schulman's case study house 22 Pier Koenig in 1959. It's quite an arresting photograph looking over a metropolis. Political reflections occupy central with love and peace movement. Tense standoff all day yesterday. Tear gas canisters lobbed into the masses. Sent protesters fleeing temporarily, but they all came back in full force. Occupy Central with Love and Peace, OCLP, is a non-violent direct action movement that demands genuine universal suffrage in Hong Kong. And this is interesting, I think, and how China handles it's going to be very, very interesting indeed. Dealing with the threat posed by the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria is a more immediate concern than confronting Syrian dictator Bashar Assad, President Obama said. They're all connected, but there's a more immediate concern that has to be dealt with, Obama told 60 Minutes. Said he recognized the contradiction in a contradictory land and a contradictory circumstance, but vowed the US was not going to stabilize Syria under the rule of Assad, and said the Syrian president had ordered terrible atrocities. For a long-term political settlement for Syria to remain unified, it is not possible that Assad presides over that entire process, Obama said. On the other hand, Obama said terror networks like ISIL and Khorasan Group, an al-Qaeda offshoot operating in Syria, that was also targeted in US airstrikes, pose immediate threats to the United States. Those folks could kill Americans, Obama said. Acknowledged that the moderate Syrian opposition his administration is relying on to make sure that Assad cannot benefit from US airstrikes has been squeezed between ISIS on the one hand and the Assad regime on the other. Speaker Boner says, we've had no choice. He was talking about putting boots on the ground. These are barbarians. They intend to kill us. And if we don't destroy them first, we're going to pay the price, he said. Syria has become ground zero for jihadists worldwide, President Obama said in a CBS television interview broadcast on Sunday. More than 15,000 citizens from 80 countries have joined the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, estimates US intelligence. Apparently a lot of them are Chechens, more than 800 Russian militants. Tactical prowess of those fighters from the Caucasus who have battled Russian troops for 3 decades is evident on the Syrian battlefield. Denmark is trying a unique approach. They're going to introduce rehab for Syrian fighters. And then I couldn't resist but insert this. Of course, you do realize that those people are not really Syrian opposition. They are modern-day legionnaires collected from various Arab countries. Anyway, if their aim is to strike against IS, it's okay, but we still have our doubts about their hidden agenda. Mualim, sensible fellow. The Obama administration has not ruled out establishing a no-fly zone over northeastern Syria to protect civilians from airstrikes by the Syrian government. This was Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and General Martin Dempsey. Dempsey added that a buffer zone might at some point become a possibility, but he said that it was not imminent. Creating a buffer or no-fly zone would require warplanes to disable the Syrian government's air defense system through airstrikes, and essentially that step, I think, would constitute the redirection risk about which I was talking severally. Lavrov says the world knows terror is a bigger threat than Assad. And Borowitz, of course, tongue-in-cheek, asked if he had any advice for the president on bombing Syria. Cheney said, just enjoy it. It doesn't get any better than this. I like this photograph of more than 106,000 square kilometers of the search area in the southern Indian Ocean have been surveyed. This is looking for MH370. You will remember His Excellency Johann Borgstein told me the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal. It was the disappearance of the MH370. Since then, planes have been falling out of the sky, I wrote in August. And the uncertainty around MH370 and MH17 is sharpened by the way the story is seemingly turned on and off. That took me back to DeLillo, who said about information, we're not witnessing the flow of information as such, as much as pure spectacle or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow says if they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about the answers. And I think that's very truthful. Currency markets, euro 126.68. This is now a 2-year low for the euro. Dollar index 85.73. It's coming off 11 winning weeks. Longest streak since it was allowed to float freely in 1971. That's a big old move. Dollar yen 109.68. Swissy 0.9530. Pound 162.18. The Aussie 0.8698. Within sight of its January low of 86.60. India rupee 61.489, touched the weakest level since August 8. The won is the weakest since April 8. Rial 242.13, Egyptian pound 7.15. The rand is looking very soft, 11.27. The Bloomberg dollar spot index tracks the dollar against 10 global peers, rose to the highest since June 2010. Kiwi big drop has fallen 4.1% in the past month. Aussie down 3.6%. Dollars up 4.3%. I'll put up a 6-month chart with dollar index. I'm very bullish about that. And just go back to what I was saying at the beginning about the article I wrote. Euro dollar 126.68, 2-year lows. That's going lower still in my opinion. Gold last at 12.17. It's fallen 5.4% this month, touched 12.0704 September 25, which was the lowest since January 2nd. I think we're in front of a very big breakdown in gold. Crude oil $92.98. If you look at the chart, we've been here for a while. We're trying to find a base. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimated on September 26 that cases in Liberia and Sierra Leone were doubling every 20 days. If the Ebola virus continued to tear through the world's population at the rate it has done recently in West Africa, all hell would break loose. The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimated on September 26 that cases in Liberia and Sierra Leone were doubling every 20 days. Hypothetically speaking, if the Ebola outbreak continued to spread at that same pace, which it won't, the number of cases would surpass 1 million by January, 100 million by June, and 1 billion by August, before infecting the entire world population. sometime next fall. As I previously said, viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. The UN Health Agency said a total of 6,574 people had been infected across 5 West African countries, and of those, 3,091 have now died. More than 2,000 people took to the streets of Kinshasa on Saturday to protest a bid by President Joseph Kabila to modify the constitution to be able to stay in power beyond his 2-term limit. Responding to a call by several opposition parties, the marchers, mostly young men, shouted, "Kabila must go." The South African oil share ticked up 0.32% on Friday, but it is at 16-week lows, and it's up 7.3655% this year. The index is below that key 50,000 level. Dollar Rand, I think, is headed to 12. I'll put up a 6-month chart. Egyptian pound, it's been very stable in this area of 715. Egyptian EGX30, second best performing African stock market after Dar es Salaam, that's up 41.595% this year. Nigerian oil share down 1.234% this year at 16-week lows. Ghana up 5.0815% in 2014 and at 14-week lows. IMF forecast that GDP growth for 2014 would fall to 4.5% from 7.1% recorded in 2013. And they're saying that the fiscal deficit would end 2014 at 9.75%. The Ebola premium is driving up cocoa prices. I'll put up a chart for you of the cocoa futures. Prices for the key chocolate ingredient have surged 6%. That was last year, a week ago or so. Also, and basically, it's been one of the big outperformers, along with coffee. Kenya, I participated in an interview about the new mall economy, whether people were expanding or contracting. And I said, if you're trying to address the emerging middle class in Africa, the mall economy is the epicenter of that emerging middle class. That's where people go to spend money. Mall traffic has declined an average of 7% since September 2013, since the terrorist attack on Westgate. The trade and turnover levels in the retail sector have been badly affected due to the insecurity issues and terrorism, becoming a major concern with consumers, causing them to stay away from or spending less time in shopping centres, said that report. Big international retailers keep buying up mall space, a clear indication that they expect the current dip in mall traffic will prove temporary. Carrefour has committed to more than 100,000 square feet in the new Two Rivers shopping mall of Runda, taking 16% of the mall's total space, and it purchased 6,000 square feet in the hub, which is going to be in Cannes. I said this real estate grab is down to a belief that East Africa's growing middle class ensures mall traffic will rebound, and that with it a shortage of quality retail space, entrants have got to jump at opportunities. International retailers are looking through the noise at the moment and are prepared to make investments notwithstanding. It's pretty Darwinian in the sense that people are fighting for space. There aren't that many flagship developments that people can pile into. People are saying, we're looking to get in here, we have to get in. And I said, the mall economy remains the epicenter of that emerging middle class. And I also said it would be very unlikely and find it very difficult if we suffered another attack of Westgate's magnitude. That was 370 days ago. Unga reported very strong full-year profit after tax. Profit for the year up 40.3%, turnover up 12.3%. Earnings per share up to 6 shillings and 35 cents from 2 shillings and 59 cents, paying 75 cents as a dividend, and compelling earnings. Kenya shilling is at 89, really is outperforming in this very strong dollar environment. It's only down 2.9% against the dollar this year. Remittances, interestingly, have totaled just shy of $1 billion at the end of August, compared to 1.3 billion for the whole of last year. Strong numbers. Nairobi all share is up 18.807% this year, and It's 1.873% below an all-time high set only on the 23rd of September. The NSE 20 is up 5.8871% this year, but has corrected 190 points since the 22nd of September. That correction looks as it's over. And if you want to check any of the share prices, just scroll down to the bottom of Rich Wrap-Ups. There's a link there for rich data, and you'll find every single earnings or analysis around an A-listed share there. Once again, thank you for stopping by.